You guys, man. You guys. Or as we say around here where I'm at, y'all. Y'all. My heart is touched, genuinely. It sounds like I'm opening up with a joke, and I am not. As you know, I said on Tuesday that I was going to market the show in different ways than I have before because we had a really good weekend last week. And I thought if I was going to expand my horizons at all and try to get the show out to more people in easy and simple ways, that I was going to do it with the show to say, hey, look how good we did. I mean, that's just smart, right? I mean, I think we can all agree. Smart move. And I was overwhelmed with support from people in a bunch of different ways. I had people that responded to me in like almost in anger to be like, why have you not told me that you have a show? And I had people saying, man, I can't believe that you're doing this. Like, I'm so proud of you. Now I'm going to start watching. And then I had people be like, I've been watching the whole time. Love it. And I have no idea, how they even found it. And not that it was private, but, and those people know who they are. And it was just so incredible. And I thought there was no other way to start the show tonight than to say how thankful I am for all of those different people, even the people who did not watch until Tuesday when they saw it on my Instagram, even the people who've watched every episode without saying a word, and even the people who've watched every episode and told me every time, giving me feedback every time. I mean, every type of person that has talked to me this week about this, thank you so much. It means a lot. It definitely is a leap of faith to put yourself out there and do things like this where there's no stopping the limits as far as who can see you and who can hear you, and you're putting your personal opinions out there and you're putting parts of your personal life out there. It is limitless in where this can go, and so it definitely is very daunting to do it, but I felt like if I was ever going to do it, I needed to do it now, and I didn't want to look back on this 10 years from now and say, I'm almost 40 years old, and I never took that chance. So thank you guys so much. Enough with the sap. You know what it is. It's Thursday, week 8, which means we're doing nothing but predictions. It's my favorite show of the week. Even when we do have a good weekend and we have the opportunity to do things like we did on Tuesday, which was just go over win after win after win. Those episodes are fun. But this episode is the funnest because this is when you really test your knowledge. This is when I get to put all of my research and hard work on display, say, here's what I got, and then you're basically playing the waiting game to see how it works out. So this is super fun. I know I say this every time. I'm going to try to make this episode shorter because I want it to be an easy listen. I don't want this to be like you got to commit half your day to listen to, 1 hour of me talking. I want to try to get this below an hour. Get the predictions in there, tell you what I like, and get you out of here. Because that's what people want. That's what I like out of podcasts. Don't make me linger. Don't leave me on. So we're going to get into it. I got my graphic up for myself, and I've got my notes on my handy dandy paper over here. And I will recap quickly from Tuesday is that we do have 3 games already predicted. I've started to notice that I drink a lot of water early on, and then I don't drink any water on the back half of the episode. Anyway, so the 3 games that we have predicted is we have Miami minus 12.5. Oh, that is tomorrow. So by the time you're listening to this would be tonight. Miami minus 12.5 on Friday night at Miami. We have Georgia Tech plus 3 at Duke. That's on Saturday morning. And then we have Memphis minus 19.5 at UAB, and that is in Saturday. That's Saturday afternoon, so it should be like a 2:30 kick. And so if you want the breakdowns of those 3 games, go back to the last episode. I have timestamps on every episode. So for new listeners especially, if you're not used to watching this show, I have tried everything in my power to get the little bubbles on the bottom of the YouTube timeline so you don't have to go to the description every time to click the timestamp. I have followed the instructions on how to do that to a T, and it will not work. I'm not really sure what to do. Hopefully, I can figure that out maybe this week when I've got some time. But for now, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever, I have timestamps in all the descriptions so you can go down and click on exactly where you want to go to see what I'm talking about. So if you want predictions from those three games, that's Miami minus 12.5 Friday night, Georgia Tech plus 3 on Saturday morning, or Memphis minus 19.5 on Saturday afternoon, go back to the previous episode, click that timestamp, and you will see it. And as the last reminder for that, we did that because the numbers were really advantageous. We want to take advantage of those numbers. And the last I looked, I actually do think that Miami got up to 13.5, almost 14. I don't remember seeing Georgia Tech today. And then I think Memphis was at 20 maybe. So they did go up just like we predicted. And who knows, that could be the difference, 1 point. So we went ahead and locked those in. But for now, let's skip all the hoopla. Let's get to the predictions. Let's go through them, and let's wrap this up, and let's get to this weekend. I will say, I am very, what's the word? Disappointed is not the word. I'm worried about this weekend, and here's why. Not for this show's standpoint, as far as all of my predictions go. Ole Miss has the biggest game of the season. It's the biggest game of the year. It doesn't matter what the records are up to this point. It doesn't matter what we do after this game, because this is the hardest game on our schedule at Georgia. It only gets easier from here. Not much easier, but it only gets easier from here. And that game starts at 4 o'clock. Sorry, at 2:30. And I have to leave the house at 3 o'clock for a wedding. I know. It's disappointing. I'm not disappointed in the people I'm going to see. I'm just, can't help it. Just got to do it. Got to be a good person. It's just unfortunate. So it is what it is. So I'm not looking forward to it because I've found that oftentimes for Ole Miss football specifically, things do not go well when I can't provide my undivided attention. That being said, I want to be a good person and do my job as a friend. So I'm going to do it. And that's the last I'm going to complain about it. I got it out. It's over. Hopefully, I said this to my buddy who's actually going with me to the wedding. He's roped into this with me. Or should I say I'm roped into it with him. There's two ways this is going to go. We're either going to miss most of the game because of the wedding and say, I can't believe we won. I can't wait to go back and watch the highlights. This is going to be a great night, which isn't all that bad. Or, I hate that we lost. At least we didn't have to sit through it and watch it. It's a win-win in my book. I mean, the only way you can make it better is if you're sitting there on the couch watching the whole thing. But we'll get to watch the morning games for sure, and then we'll get to watch the night games. So it'll be fine. We're not going to miss all that much. It's okay. The card did get trimmed. As I said, we usually do that. We usually trim a couple games. And there's one that I will still talk about, although it will not be predicted on the show. So let's get through it. We have one game on Saturday morning that we have not predicted yet because the Georgia Tech game is a morning game, and we already got to that. We already did Friday. So let's start with LSU at Vandy. Vandy minus 2.5. Let's make sure I got the right page. I got 3 pages of notes for the show. And it's first up. So, 11 a.m., Nashville, Tennessee. LSU is coming to town. We start off every prediction with all the numbers. So, we will start with the simple rating system number on this game. Vandy is at a 16 and LSU is at a 14. So we have a 2-point difference on the simple rating system, saying that Vandy would beat an average team by 2 more points than LSU would on a neutral site. So you can't compare that. So if they played each other on a neutral site, Vandy would be favored by 2. Well, as fate would have it, they are favored by 2.5 at home. So that's good. Both of these teams have a pretty low strength of schedule, pretty average. Vandy is pretty much right at average. They're hovering around a 0, and LSU is at a 4. So again, just like the simple rating system, the strength of schedule system or model has 0 being an average schedule. Excuse me. So both of these teams are right around that. Where you find some separation in the numbers alone without actually looking into them, Vandy scores 43 points a game and only allows 19. LSU scores 25 points a game and allows 12. Both of those differentials aren't all that bad. There's just a significant drop off from point production on those teams when you're talking about offense. And obviously, they're giving up about the same number on defense. So obviously, there's an edge for Vandy there. And then, if you watch the show, the next thing we'll do is talk about the games that they've played already. The one thing that I like about this game is they have a common opponent, South Carolina. What they do against South Carolina, Scott, I'll tell you. LSU played South Carolina, and they won 20-10. 20-10 sounds a lot better than what it really is. That's a 10-point game, so it's a 2-possession game. And anytime you score 20 points in today's day and age, that's not all that much. It's 2 touchdowns. The last time Vandy played South Carolina earlier this year, granted, Lenore Sellers did not play the entire game. They won 31-7, so much more of a dominating fashion. And to note also, LSU's game against South Carolina was at home. Vandy was on the road. So you take out Lenore Sellers, you kind of still have an edge being the home team. So completely different outcomes there, minus the win or the loss. They both won, but they were in completely different fashions. The next other kind of significant games to talk about, LSU obviously lost to Ole Miss on the road 24-19. That game was a little bit closer than it should have been, and they beat Florida 20-10. That was an ugly game. DJ Lagway threw 5 interceptions in that game, so definitely could have gone a little bit differently had that not happened, but it did. And then the other significant game that Vandy has under their belt is on the road at Bama 30-14. But if you remember, Alabama scored a touchdown on the last drive of the game when they completely did not need it whatsoever. They were basically a first down away from ending the game. But what happened was they kind of lined it up, didn't have the ability to kneel because of timeouts and whatnot, so they kind of had to run a play anyway. They ran it, and they scored a touchdown on it. Not really how it's drawn up, not really the purpose of that situation, but it happened. So realistically, that game was a lot closer than what the score makes it out to be. I don't know that there's really an edge in those significant matchups there, with the exception of the common opponent in South Carolina. Some other things to note, let's really break this down. Vandy is coming off of a bye, so they've had 2 weeks to prepare for LSU, and LSU, in some ways, probably is hoping for a bye, wishing they had a bye to prepare for this game because they're still not totally healthy. People still believe that Nussmeier is not 100% healthy. We've kind of seen it in his play. He hasn't played all that well, and definitely not been the Heisman candidate that people thought he was going to be at the beginning of this season. And then you have dynamic up-tempo offense with Vandy, which is similar to what Ole Miss kind of plays, where they're going to mix it up. They're going to run with the quarterback, and they're going to move the ball fast. And what we saw with LSU is that gave them problems against Ole Miss. The viral clip of Whit Weeks throwing up on the field, and they kind of joked, Lane Kiffin joked about that being because of the tempo. And it seems like he did it last week too, so maybe that's just something that he does. I have no idea. But it definitely was, if you watch that game, LSU Ole Miss, it was evident that tempo definitely gives them problems. And if you could do anything to give the LSU defense problems, then you're doing something right, because that is the shining star of their program right now. Their defense is very good. But what we did see is that they do have holes. Some really credible, very high personalities in the sports media said that the Ole Miss game was the exposure that that LSU did not want, and people were going to start catching on to. And I think one of those things was tempo. So we'll see how that plays out with Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt does a really good job of preparing for their opponent. They don't just run the same things every week that just work for them just because they work for them. They will pick you apart in ways that kind of exploit your weaknesses. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But again, you have good tape from the Ole Miss game where you kind of see what works and know that, hey, we can do that too. Not something like where you're watching, if you're watching Alabama play LSU and you're Vanderbilt and you're trying to find ways to do what they're doing, it just doesn't really work because those teams don't really match up. So in this case, it should help. Diego Pavia has the same number of, what does that say? My handwriting gets me every single time. Oh, this is what it says. Diego Pavia has the same number of passing yards as Nussmeier on the year, and that's notable because Pavia runs a lot more than Nussmeier does. So similar pass number. I think the pass numbers were off by less than 10, so I wrote that they were the same. And he has significantly more rushing yards. Um, more rush yards than LSU. Pavia has more rushing yards than LSU's top running back. Now, we know that LSU doesn't run the ball very well. This past weekend was the best that they've run the ball all year, and that's a one-time event. Prior to last week's game, they were actually very poor at running the ball to the point that Brian Kelly was crashing out in the press conference. We all saw that. Nussmeier has a ratio right now of 9 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, which is not very good. 9 is not a great number for a quarterback like him. Again, a Heisman favorite at the beginning of the year. They run an offense where you do rely on the pass somewhat. You can't really chalk up the 9 touchdowns to the system. It is more so to his play. So a 9-5 ratio there is not promising whatsoever. One thing Vanderbilt can do here: run the ball, control the game. Where have you heard that before? Pretty much every other game that they've played against better opponents. Now, I'm not saying that LSU is the better opponent here, but they definitely have the ability to do that. They have done that in other games where they just continue to win, Alabama being their only loss so far. So, and what we saw with the Ole Miss game, I'll continue to go back to that because that is a very good opponent for LSU. So when you're comparing the game versus what they're playing this weekend, it's just easier to comp. And what we saw was Kewan Lacey just continue to give Ole Miss an edge, kind of open up the pass game because they're, keying in on him a little bit too much, and then they key on the pass, and then you give it back to him to run. So it's kind of a feeding situation where you're going, nickel and dime, one off pass run, whatever. And they can do the RPO arguably as well as Ole Miss can too. So kind of mixing that look up. So if Vandy can run the ball and control the game, control time of possession, I think it's going to go really well for them. Vandy is outgaining opponents by 117 yards on the ground, and they are allowing less than 100 yards on the run game. So it shows you that their run defense will stand up. And that is factored in with the Alabama game, playing a really good team there. Obviously way better than LSU. Alabama's a much better team. So that game goes into those stats. So again, outgaining their opponent on the ground by 117 yards and then allowing less than 100 yards. And then Vandy is outgaining their opponents in total offense by 154 yards per game. And they are forcing more turnovers than they're creating. So their defense is getting turnovers every game. They're not turning the ball over all that much, with the exception of the Bama game, was really the only time that I can remember going back to last year, watching Vanderbilt and being like, they've got to quit turning the ball over. I mean, and usually you're not going to say that until there's multiple, which there were in that Alabama game. But, definitely not typical for them to give the ball away. So as long as Vanderbilt can control the game, control time of possession, control the ground game, and not turn the ball over, I don't see any reason why they can't win this game and then cover this number as well. Some other things I had, LSU is allowing 70% passing completion rate from quarterbacks. They are giving up 55 more yards than they are averaging in the air, and they are getting less than 1 passing touchdown per game, so they're only averaging 0.7 passing touchdowns per game, which is the better side of their offense. So very concerning there that the best part of their offense is not even scoring a touchdown per game. And then they are giving up 31 yards on the ground more than what they are achieving on their own, and they are giving up 1.2 turnovers per game. So they are averaging more than a turnover per game. So if all those things play out, and look, we said this before, you make predictions based off of expectations. And so if these two teams play to their average performance and what we expect them to do, I don't see any reason why Vanderbilt can't win this game, and I don't see any reason why they can't cover. So we will predict Vandy minus 2.5 there. That's probably one of the ones we actually feel very, very good about. That would be one I would be shocked to see it go the other way. And Vanderbilt plays really good at home. It's a tough place to play because it's a smaller stadium. They've made a lot of improvements and renovations, and it looks amazing. I actually went to a game 2 years ago when it was just a bowl. They hadn't even started construction yet. That was the Ole Miss game. And that was the year that Ole Miss won the Peach Bowl against Penn State. was ranked number 11 in the country at that time, if not higher than that, actually. And if the 12-team playoff was in place that year, we would have been in. And that team was down to Vanderbilt at halftime, and that was a year before Pavia. So, it just shows that like that team is just hard to beat at home. It's just one of those where there's a lot of distractions. Nashville, the city, it's a great place to be. Everybody loves to go there, and then you go into this stadium and it's a little bit smaller. When I was there, like the audio was terrible, the speakers were bad, and I think it wasn't really all that full. But they were still like showing life, and now you have this really good team. The stadium's not much bigger. Everything else is about the same. And so I just see that this game goes Vandy's way. I don't know that I would really be surprised if they. I hate to say it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they blow them out. And just I'd be shocked if LSU finds a way to win this game. So we will move on from that. So I always end every prediction before the next one with the number. Vandy -2.5. Got it there. Next game, Ohio State at Wisconsin. Ohio State favored by 24.5 points. That number has gone down. It was at 27.5, so we have gained 3 points in favor for Wisconsin, but actually in favor for us predicting. When we are going to predict Ohio State, I'll give that early. So Ohio State, obviously the best team in the country, or one of the best teams in the country. You have them at a 23 on the SRS and a 4 at the strength of schedule. Wisconsin, this is the first time I've predicted a team that is negative on the simple rating system. Wisconsin is a -2 on the SRS, so if they played an average team on a neutral site, they would probably lose by 2, according to that number. They have the same strength of schedule at a 4, so they're playing similar competition, which is good because it makes it a little bit easier to predict when you're talking about who they've played so far. So neither of these teams, especially for Ohio State, they're not facing anything more than what they've faced already. Wisconsin is taking a significant jump up in talent from what they have played already. Ohio State scoring 36 points per game and only allowing 6. That is number 1 in the country for average points given up to opponents. Wisconsin is scoring 15 and allowing 23. So a negative average point differential there. Significant matchups. We have Ohio State at Washington, which is a tough place to play, winning 24-6, and at Illinois, winning 34-16. So they went to a, not as tough of a place to play in Illinois, but played a better team in Illinois on the road and beat them by more points. And Wisconsin's, surprisingly, only significant matchup to this point, other than Alabama. I have this written down because it was their last matchup. Last week, they played Iowa and lost 37-0. 37-0. And we know, just from keeping up with them, Iowa is not a good team this year. They are, in fact, one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, and Wisconsin lost to them 37-0. So you think about that, what you're going to see at Ohio State is nothing like what you're going to see from Iowa. So I feel terrible that this game is going to go completely out of hand for Wisconsin, and Ohio State is going to absolutely blow them out. And knowing that, we will try to expedite this prediction. Iowa was only allowing 30 points per game, and they scored 34 versus Albany, 47 versus UMass, and 38 versus Rutgers. So not only are they, they are averaging 30 points per game scoring. So you have 30 points per game, and the reason it's that high is because they scored 34 versus Albany, 47 versus UMass, and 38 versus Rutgers, which is probably the worst team in the Big Ten. So those are 3 inflated scores that's bringing that average score per game up. So knowing that, hey, you lost to Iowa 37-0, and they don't even score that many points in games that even matter or against valuable competition. So very, very bad stat for Wisconsin. Ohio State scores tons, as you can see, 36 points per game. And just short for Wisconsin. So Ohio State scores tons. Wisconsin hasn't scored more than 14 points against a Power 4 team yet this year. So if they reach that peak of scoring 14 versus Ohio State, which they probably won't, but if somehow they score 14 against Wisconsin, that would reach their career or their season best, you would have to expect that Ohio State probably scores somewhere in the 40s, in which case makes me feel really good about this number. If Washington can't score more than 6 against Ohio State, then Wisconsin definitely can't, because Washington is a much better team. They actually have a chance to win a significant number of games in the Big Ten. So when you compare Washington to Wisconsin, this game is dangerous. This is very dangerous. The only thing that I don't want here, we are going to predict Ohio State minus the 24.5. The only thing I don't want is for it to get so out of hand that they draw back a little bit, take the starters out, and then you see some garbage time stuff. I don't really expect that to happen, because I feel like this is so lopsided as far as the teams are concerned that they get out ahead early enough that it's just insurmountable. At the time that would start to happen, which probably wouldn't be until the fourth quarter, because even in a lopsided game, you're probably going to let your starters play 3 full quarters just for the reps. So, yeah, I feel really good about this one too, but we're going to take Ohio State minus 24.5. That's one page down. Next up, we have Michigan State at Indiana. No, that's not what I have. My papers are out of whack. Get your papers right, Scott. Michigan State at Indiana. Indiana is minus 27.5, which is kind of crazy. Indiana has a larger spread against Michigan State at home than Ohio State does against Wisconsin, which Wisconsin is worse than both of these teams. But anyway, another negative SRS number. This is crazy. 2 in the same week, and we haven't had one all year. Michigan State is minus 1 on the SRS, and they are minus 0.2 on the strength of schedule. So they have played below average competition, and they are losing to a neutral site game against an average team, which is very bad. They're scoring 29 points per game and allowing 31, so we have a negative differential there. Indiana is at a 22 on the SRS and a 5 on strength of schedule, so playing considerably tougher competition. And considering the circumstances at a neutral site against an average team, they would do considerably well. Now, we know they're one of the best teams in the country. I myself have them as the number 1 team in the country, simply because Ohio State hasn't played quite the competition that they have just yet, but not all that different. I think those 1, 2, 3 rankings are interchangeable at this point. Indiana is scoring 44 points per game and allowing 11 points per game. That is fourth best in the country. So a great defense and a great offense. Mendoza is fantastic. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He leads the Big Ten in touchdowns with 17 touchdowns this year. 17 touchdowns in like five or six games, which is incredible. This Michigan State team is not going to have the firepower to even keep up in this game. I don't see this as a look-ahead spot with Penn State next week for Indiana, because we all know the state of that program. I don't think they're looking into that all that much. So the tackles for loss leader for Indiana has 10 tackles for loss this year. One player in 6 games has 10 tackles for loss. The team has 57 tackles for loss this year on Indiana. So with Indiana having 57 tackles for loss this year, they are averaging 5.7 per game. That is incredible. And against a Michigan State team that is ready to be exposed, I love the way that sounds. Indiana is outgaining their offenses by 273 yards. Whoa, let me say it again. Indiana is outgaining the opposing offense by 273 yards. That is almost 300 yards more that they are getting per game against opponents on average. So it is incredible. We're really hoping this is just a freight train that is off the tracks and can't be stopped at this point. Again, I don't see this as being a look-ahead spot. I don't see it being a letdown spot. I think this team has the composure. This team with Cignetti, he's going to have them in the right spot. I think this is going to go their way as long as they do what they're supposed to do. They are allowing, on average, less than 1 touchdown per game in passing and in rushing. So in total, allowing less than 1 touchdown per game. Again, just going back to how good that defense is. They're averaging 7 yards per play on offense, and they have less than 1 penalty per game. Less than 1 penalty per game. They play clean, they play hard, and they beat the crap out of people. And I think the Oregon game is the only time they haven't beaten the crap out of somebody. And really, when you look at it going on the road in that situation where Oregon is playing to be the number 1 team in the country, Indiana gets it done. Like I said on Tuesday, I mean, they threw a pick 6 to tie the game against Oregon, and Indiana was totally unfazed. So I don't see this going any differently. Sometimes it just seems really easy. I know that like we're picking all these heavy favorites because we just expect it to happen. But genuinely, I think these teams are primed and ready. We're at the point of the year where you're not really getting influenced by other games yet, because you've kind of been in your spots to be tested. You've been in your spots where you have to take advantage of teams that are worse than you, and this is where we have teams just doing what they're supposed to be doing week in and week out because we're getting to the nitty-gritty part of the year. So I see Indiana totally going in stride here from last week, moving on to next week, and they are just cruising to the end of their season. So I have Indiana minus 27.5. Next game up is Ole Miss at Georgia, minus 6.5. Georgia's minus 6.5, so obviously game of the week for us. You know that I don't normally talk about these Ole Miss games very much because I am biased, so I want to save you guys from my bias, and I don't want you to hear my prediction and think of it one way when I'm not giving you a totally truthful. It's all truthful, but I'm not giving you an unbiased prediction, so it's unfair to you. So I typically skip these games. I just give you the prediction and move on. But there is some stuff I will say here. Ole Miss is plus 7.5 now. It actually moved. I read 6.5 off my sheet, but I wrote it down here from earlier. Ole Miss is plus 7.5, so they are giving Georgia a touchdown and some. So you know that I say this all the time. In competitive games like this game will be competitive. It's really hard to pick one team to score more than 2 possessions ahead of the other team. I know Ole Miss's defense isn't the most glaring part of their program, but Georgia has been vulnerable in almost every game so far that they've played this year, except the bad teams. One thing of note, when I was looking up the current number, I saw something that caught my eye. Ole Miss is plus 7.5, so not only is that line moved up a point, but Ole Miss plus 7.5 was the favorite. It was minus 115. Georgia minus 7.5 was plus 100. So Georgia to cover was actually an underdog, which means really I don't know why the line moved up 1 to 7.5. It probably should be at 6.5 according to that. So that gives me confidence right there because look, I've always said Vegas knows more than we do. They've got it figured out somehow, whether it's an algorithm or a model or a simulator that they have, they've got it figured out. So the fact that Georgia to cover was actually an underdog bet says a lot about this game. Ole Miss has a top 30 pass defense. I know I just said defense isn't the best part of their program. That's pretty obvious. We all know that they score tons of points. But I was actually very shocked to see that our pass defense isn't all that bad. And we have seen it because we've seen it. We've seen interceptions. We've seen teams come in like LSU that has the passing part of their game as the best part of their offense, and it gets totally shut down. So I do have some confidence there that we're going to probably force Georgia to run the ball. And although our run defense is not very good, when you can kind of force your hand a little bit, it does help you give you a little bit of leverage. And one thing that I heard earlier is that Ole Miss is known to score a lot, and they jump out fast. One thing is that Georgia is known to do this season is get behind early. They got behind early in the Tennessee game. They got behind early in the Alabama game. And they got behind early in the Auburn game. And if that happens, if you get behind early, one thing you're not going to do is start pounding the rock because you're speeding the game up because the clock's going to continue to run. And they don't run the ball particularly well compared to their passing game. So if Ole Miss can get out ahead and then it forces Georgia to throw the ball more, then that's where you see the top 30 pass defense from Ole Miss come into play, and we can kind of take advantage of that. Georgia plays from behind. I said that. Ole Miss can score. I said that. So, again, I want to keep this pretty short because I am biased, but I have Ole Miss, obviously, plus 7.5 here. And I am going to add that to my official sheet. It's always the prediction's always on my official sheet. I just don't spend time talking about it, predicting it, because, again, I don't want to waste your time. But I felt like this information this time, where Ole Miss is probably going to be the heavy underdog from many people, I figured it was worth talking about that, hey, there's a little bit more here than what people are giving it credit for. And they see a Georgia team that is hungry to win a game that they're supposed to win and win it convincingly at home, and it may not turn out that way. So the one game that I want to get to that I actually took off of the cards, most of them I typically do not talk about games that I trim, but I trimmed this game, but I still want to talk about it, A&M at Arkansas. Now, A&M is a heavy favorite on the SRS model. They're 25 on SRS, which is second in the country. They are 10 in strength of schedule, which is very good. That's third in the country, so they are top 5 in both of those models. Arkansas is an 8 on both of those. So a very large difference on the SRS, and not all that different on the strength of schedule. So both of these teams have played very good competition. A&M scores 34 points a game. Arkansas scores 36 points a game. A&M allows 20, and Arkansas allows 30. When you hear that, this is what was going through my head. Both of these teams give up points. Both of these teams score points. Arkansas scores more than A&M. A&M is doing very well this year. Obviously, the SRS and the strength of schedule favors A&M by a lot. But what held me up in this game was the number was like, I've already deleted it, so I don't have the number in front of me, but it was 7.5, I believe, or 8.5. And I can see this game not going Arkansas's way, but Texas A&M really hasn't hiccuped yet this year. Obviously, they beat Notre Dame in week 1 or week 2, whatever that was. They beat Auburn by 6, and they beat Mississippi State. They beat Florida. They're beating these good teams, or at least teams that can stack up talent-wise, and they're doing really well. But now the pressure's on because you and Ole Miss are both undefeated, but now you've jumped into the number 1 spot in the conference, and now I think all the pressure's on you because they look at the Ole Miss Georgia game and say, I don't think I have to worry about that all that much. If Ole Miss falls, it's going to be this week. And so from an A&M standpoint, you're like, well, we just got to go into Arkansas and win that game, find a way to win. And now we're heavily the favorite in the SEC. So I think the pressure is going to be on them a little bit more because what we've seen from Arkansas is they don't give up. I think they were a little bit more motivated last week going into Tennessee, which is a low-key rival for them. You had Petrino's first game as an interim head coach. I think they wanted to play for him. They wanted to find a way to create a new identity for themselves. And they tried very, very hard to beat Tennessee on the road. And although they did not get the win, they lost by 3 points or whatever it was. So I think they found something. I'm a little afraid that they found something. I'm glad that Ole Miss already played them. But one thing that we saw, even going back to the Ole Miss game, is that they keep up with you. They had a chance to beat Ole Miss. Let's not forget. They find ways to keep up with you. They're hard to put away. Notre Dame is really the only team this year that has put them away. All the other games, they had 3 games come down to the last possession. With Tennessee, it came down to the last possession. They got it, but they didn't have enough time to get the ball back to be able to take the lead or either win the game. So I just see all these close games that they're playing and all these games where they have just a few missed opportunities, and they probably win if any of them go their way. So I'm a little afraid that A&M doesn't coast into this game, but this is the game where they just skate by and they're like, woof, glad that's over. Let's move on. And for that reason, I did not like the number. And you might think, well, if you didn't like the number for A&M, why don't you just take Arkansas if you sound more confident in it? I'm probably more confident in Arkansas, but it's just not a team that I'm willing to predict on right now. They haven't given me the clear-mindedness to say, yeah, I believe in them. Let's take them. They've really just not done a whole lot of things well. They've just done enough things good. So if I'm A&M, I'm not worried, but I'm definitely not feeling good. I'm definitely not comfortable. There's definitely ways you can lose this game. So for that, we just decided to trim it, get away from it. We'll watch it from a fan's perspective and just enjoy it for what it is and don't be tied in with a prediction. So we trimmed it, but I wanted to talk about it. So maybe that if you had this game, on your mind, there's some information for you. There's how I'm feeling about it. And it was convincing enough for me to stay away. Because as I've said before, if I'm not at least, let's say over 50% confident in a game, you're not going to hear about it from me. So in this game, I had it on my slate. I felt less than 50% confident in A&M, and I felt less than 50% confident in Arkansas. I know that scale doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. That's just how my brain works. So we went ahead and left it to the side. So what we will predict on next is Texas Tech. They are minus 7.5 at Arizona State. that number has moved as well. I think that is because Sam Leavitt is predicted to come back for Arizona State. He was out for injury previously, so I think that's why the number has moved from, I think it was 9.5 or maybe 10. So that's an obvious reason to move the number. You're getting your starting quarterback back. That's great. And obviously, I won't lie here. This number felt very similar to the Texas A&M number for me, where I can totally see Texas Tech covering this. I can totally see Arkansas or A&M covering that number. But I just don't feel all that. Like, I feel some sense of like this momentum has to end at some point where something doesn't go your way and you got to scratch and claw your way to win. The only difference here is, number one, Texas Tech is undefeated against the spread. I said last week against Kansas, I took that game off of my prediction because I was afraid that was going to be the game they were going to have a hiccup, and that was going to be the game where they just slightly didn't meet expectations, so they found a way to win, but they didn't cover, and they proved me wrong. And because they proved me wrong last week, I have the same thoughts this week, but I'm not going to let it get the best of me. I'm going to continue to be confident in the teams that I'm confident in and have proven week in and week out. And Texas Tech, if anybody in the country has exceeded their expectations, it's Texas Tech. So I'm not going to go against them again and fail myself again. Not that I ever went against them, but I took their prediction off. So we're not going to have that here. We are going to take Texas Tech minus 7.5 because we do believe in this team. But for the prediction's sake, let's go ahead and go through it real quick since I already gave you the prediction. They are 24 on the SRS. 24, that number is huge. It's big enough to be fourth in the country on that model. They're right at average on strength of schedule. Arizona State is only a 7, so a considerably different number there, and they are a 3 on the strength of schedule. So they have an edge as far as competition. But Texas Tech's competition is not all that bad. You have Houston, Kansas, and Utah on Texas Tech's schedule that they've already went in and won those games. So very impressive. It's actually hard for me to believe after saying that they're somehow a 0 on the strength of schedule, right at average. But they are, somehow. But just looking at that alone, 24 on the SRS for TTU and 7 for Arizona State, and the line is 7.5. That number is totally off, very far off. So if that case, you would think it would be 14-point spread, and then you give Arizona State a 3-point bonus for being at home. So that puts it at 11, 10, 11-ish, but it's at 7. So we're actually feeling really good about that. Texas Tech scores 47 points per game. That's second in the country. They allow 12 points per game. That's 7th in the country. So they are top 10 in both of those categories. Arizona State scores 26 and gives up 24. So a very close margin there. Their one common opponent is Utah, which is a great common opponent because Utah is a very good team. Arizona State lost that game 42-10, and Texas Tech won that game by 3 possessions. I'm obviously not seeing something that Vegas is seeing because I have given you like 3 different data points where Texas Tech should be majorly favored in this game, and they're only favored by 2 possessions. And you might say, well, shouldn't that be a sign that you're missing something? Yeah, it should, but it's not because I just can't force myself to think this way about my favorite non-SEC team. Arizona State won by 3 against TCU. They won by 3 against Baylor, and they beat Texas State. Those are their most notable games so far, minus the Mississippi State game in which they lost. So they're not beating teams by a whole lot. Now, if they win the game at all, then they obviously cover the number, which is good for them. But the point being there is that they really can't put teams away. And if you can't put Texas Tech away, they're going to put you away. It's got to go one way or the other. And they are only 59% pass completion per game in the air. That's Arizona State. And they have less than 200 yards in the air per game. So they are not passing the ball all that well. And obviously, Texas Tech has one of the better defenses in the country, so they're not going to give up the run game as much as it would probably take for Arizona State to win this game. So if I don't think Arizona State can win outright, that means Texas Tech has to win by some number of points. And 7.5 is close enough to 1 possession. It is just barely over the 1 possession mark that I will take Texas Tech minus 7.5. Please don't do me dirty. I'm believing in you. Nobody else believes in you. Not really. Everybody believes in you. I really believe in you, so don't do me wrong here, Texas Tech. I made the mistake last week. Don't let me make the mistake this week. Texas Tech, minus 7.5. We got one more. The only other game in the afternoon was Memphis minus 19.5, which we predicted that already. So we have two more games here. Tennessee at Alabama. Alabama is minus 8.5. That is the other premier game of the weekend. I hope to be home in time to watch this game from its entirety. Tennessee is a 13 on the SRS and a 1 in strength of schedule. Blah blah blah. I'm trying to speed this up, so I'm talking so fast I'm stumbling over myself. Alabama is a 19 on the SRS and an 8 on strength of schedule. That is good enough to be top 10 in both of those numbers. 19 on the SRS is 7th best in the country, and an 8 on strength of schedule is 5th best in the country. So they are playing very good competition and winning by a good margin, minus the Florida State game. That's what's crazy, too, is you factor in being top 10 in both of those numbers, and you lost by like 30 to Florida State. So it's crazy that all balances out still. Tennessee is the leading offense in the country as far as points per game. They're scoring 48 points per game, but they are giving up 30 points per game. Alabama, on the other side, scores 34 points per game and allowing 17, so still not a great number defensively, but the differential is much higher. Alabama has a not great run defense, but Tennessee has a not great secondary. So Tennessee is, and let me say this, going up against Ty Simpson, you want to have a good pass defense. Because if you have holes in your pass defense whatsoever, the one person in this country that's going to exploit them, no doubt, is going to be Ty Simpson. So although Bama's run defense kind of worries me a little bit because people think Josh Heupel's offense is air raid, spread the field, go vertical. He does that really well because his run offense is very good, and he plays into the run offense very well. So their run game is very sneaky good. It allows them to be very good and very explosive on the pass side of the game. So that's where people get kind of mixed up because that's what they see. So it does worry me that Alabama's run defense is not that great. But again, if anything, it balances out. But really, it actually gives me more confidence that Alabama will have an opportunity to exploit their secondary in the passing game. Alabama's turned the ball over twice all year. 1, 2. That's how many times they've turned the ball over this year. That is fantastic from an offensive standpoint. They are forcing almost two turnovers per game. It was like 1.8 turnovers per game. So if they can not turn the ball over and force 2 turnovers, that's 2 opportunities they have to score. That's enough to cover the 8.5 spread that they have right now. Tennessee is possibly in a look ahead last week. Because obviously the Bama game is super, super important. So when you look at the Arkansas game for Tennessee, it was much closer than it should have been. I think Arkansas, again, is kind of a slight rival for them. So although I'm sure they took that game very seriously, treated it very importantly. That's not a word. I do think they looked ahead to Bama a little bit. And what I've always said is if you overlook one opponent to look for another, you are concerned. And you should be going up against Bama. I would say the same thing about Ole Miss with Georgia. They obviously looked ahead to Georgia when they played Washington State, and it almost bit them in the butt. Tennessee definitely did that last week with Arkansas. So I do see a scenario where they really want to win this game, obviously, and maybe it's going to get to them a little bit when things don't go their way and they start to like panic and get a little chaotic. And you know, I don't know. Maybe there's a possible identity crisis there, you know, because, again, people aren't really talking about Tennessee. That's why I had them at my top 10, and I made a point of this, that nobody else has Tennessee up that high, really, because they're kind of just falling under the radar every week after week after week. And I worry that Tennessee isn't really used to the view of their program being like that in the recent years. They're used to being a premier program. They're used to being talked about a lot, and so maybe this is an opportunity for them to form an identity, but maybe this is an opportunity for them to lose their identity. You never really know, and I don't say that to harp on them. I think they're doing a lot of really good things. Heupel's one of the best coaches in the country. He's got the best offense in the country, but again, like you talk about all that, and then you look at like who's talking about him. Not really anybody. Everybody's too worried about Bama and Ohio State and Georgia and you know, Indiana, and it's like Tennessee's like, hey, we're here too. So I hope that doesn't play out for them. As far as the prediction goes, I do hope it plays out for them that way. But we'll see. Tennessee hasn't beat Bama on the road in over a decade. This series in the last recent years has been very much like Ole Miss Arkansas. Ole Miss Arkansas, the last 4 years, the home team has won. It's kind of the same deal here for Tennessee, Alabama. So obviously that gives you an edge at Bama at home. They're doing a lot of things right. They have gotten their wake-up call in week 1 against Florida State, and they have not looked back yet. And so, I would hope for this prediction's sake that it continues that way where the home team wins. And Ty Simpson, I have Ty Simpson as the most efficient quarterback in the SEC by the numbers. So again, just goes into him. Number 1, not having turnovers. Number 2, having great numbers offensively, touchdown wise and passing yards wise, and he's extremely efficient in doing that. So, I think back to the Georgia game with Tennessee. Obviously, they were very impressive. They were a field goal away from beating them, but this is the most vulnerable Georgia team we have ever seen. So I think you have to remember that and not look at that as a result. Look at it for what it's worth. This is, again, I just see that this is being a Bama game where they find a way to go up 2 possessions and hold it. I'm not saying that they're going to blow them out. I think the game is going to be largely competitive for most of it. So for my Tennessee fans that listen to this, and I have one Tennessee fan, I love him to death. He texts me every single week after the show and critiques the way that I talk about Tennessee. It's nothing personal. I said that they are one of the best teams in the country. I have them number 10 in my rankings. This game is tough. This is a rivalry game where it doesn't matter who you are going into this game. Just like Ohio State, Michigan, just like Mississippi State, Ole Miss, just like all these other games, Georgia, Alabama, and now Tennessee, Alabama. This is a rivalry game. It doesn't matter who you are, what you've done. It matters what you do on Saturday. Alabama's the home team. They are the better identity right now. They are doing things right now. And they've already gotten their wake-up call, so you can't surprise them with anything. And this is a coaching staff from Alabama that went up against the same exact coaching staff against Tennessee last year. So there's no surprises here. These people know what to expect. For that, I will favor the home team here. I do think it's not going to be as hard in this game to go up 2 possessions as it is in the past or in some other games. So the 8.5, I'm not all that scared of. Who knows? Maybe some people are confident in Tennessee and they bring that number down and we can benefit from that. But as of right now, it's at 8.5, so I will take Bama there. To my Tennessee friend, I'm sorry. It just has to go this way for right now. Prove me wrong. I'm begging you. Last game on the card. We're going to finish up quick with this one because it's simple. Missouri at Auburn. Auburn plus 1.5. You're giving the home team at night, one of the toughest places to play at Auburn, at night, who is coming off one of the angriest, most pissed off losses they have had in their program history. The referees arguably gave Georgia the game against Auburn last week. They had every lucky break go their way. They had every toss-up call go their way, and Auburn got no help. They did everything that they could to win that game. They did most of the things right, and I have never seen a program so pissed off about a loss as I saw Auburn last week. They have Missouri this week, who is vulnerable because Missouri finally got their slap in the face that everybody's been wanting them to get. They thought they were the big bag dog. They weren't. Alabama went into Missouri last week, dominated that game. Even though it was a 3-point game, they dominated that game. Missouri is worried. They are in an identity crisis right now. They don't know who they are. They don't know where they're going to go because now they're like, oh, crap. What we thought was going our way is not going our way. We finally got some trouble. It's a wake-up call, but now what do we do? And Auburn is as pissed off as I have ever seen them. They want to win so badly. They will do whatever it takes to win this game, and they will try their hardest to absolutely blow them out of the water. So if you're going to give me 1 point in favor of Auburn at home, at night, I'm going to take it. And that is our card for Week 8 this Saturday. We're going to wrap it right there. Number 1, thank you again. I cannot say thank you enough. Number 2, we finally reached our goal. We're at 54 minutes here on this recording. We'll be able to shave a minute or 2 off that. So hoorah there. Get you in and get you out. This is going to be a crazy week. This could either be similar to last week where we are like way on the winning side, or this could be terrible. I don't see this going in the middle. This is going to be either really good or really bad. Hopefully, really good. I do feel good about all my picks here, and the predictions I think will work out as long as everything goes as expected. And if you know anything about college football, it probably won't. But that's why we're here, because we have more weeks to come and more chances to redeem ourselves. But I feel great about this. This is a great show, great episode. Thank you to all the people who support me, all the people who I might gain in this episode from the exposure we got last week. We're going to continue to try and market this as best we can to get our information out there, share the love we have for the sport out there, get people watching college football, get people enjoying college football, and make this sport what it is. We're going to have fun. It's going to be a great Saturday. I cannot wait to see you guys on Tuesday to recap an awesome weekend of college football. Week 8 on the horizon starts tomorrow for me, today for you. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. We will see you on Tuesday. Hotty toddy.